All right, class, we're going to do chapter 8 here. Let me share my screen. Um, Slideshow. It's going to be a short chapter. So just let you know, it shouldn't be more than like 15, 20 minutes. If it's more than 20 minutes, I probably got to even get distracted going around here. Chapter 8, business ethics and technology. Business ethics and technology is such an important topic to talk about because this is kind of the direction we're going in. What's kind of there's some scary parts about it, but I think what's exciting about technology, just kind of like in a more macro sense, is that I think for students who are going through classes like this, to me, it's super exciting to think about. You could legitimately be doing something in 25, 30 years from now as a profession that doesn't even exist today, but part of that foundation that is of the industries are being basically kind of created today, literally in real time. And what we're doing, the decisions that we're making today, how those are going to drastically impact the future, our relationship with data, our relationship with artificial intelligence, and kind of how that all works together and where technology fits in, where we fit in with technology. So let's talk a little bit about big data. What is big data? That's just the multitude of information that is available and how businesses are striving to put such information to work. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of data out there. And how do we best utilize this to improve our lives, but also do it in a responsible way? So big data is characterized by the 3 V's. 1, high volume. There's a ton of volume of data. 2, high velocity. And 3, because there's a lot of it, there's a lot coming at you, and then there's such a variety in the data as well. Continue on big data. Using big data in business analytics, artificial intelligence essentially combines to alter the business world in more ways than we can describe. The business world and our world are changing daily, by every second, by every moment, because of data and how data interacts with business in our lives. AI has great potential for transforming workplaces and operations for the better, more efficiently, but then also people think for the worst too. Is it taking away jobs? Yes, it can take away jobs, but is that at the end of the day, is that going to lead to a better product, a better process, a better system for all of us? And AI is also changing the way managers do their jobs. Instead of essentially always managing people, which you're always going to have to do that, you're going to have to manage that data. I got a good buddy who works for Amazon. He basically manages one of their data centers. He's actually he is responsible for 40 current. What I'm saying is 40%, 46% of the world's internet comes out of his office, and he's basically told your job is to manage people there and get them the help that they need. They tell him you cannot touch any of those racks, those data racks. You're not allowed to touch any of that stuff. You help the people, you manage the people. So there's always going to be the data, but there's always going to be people who are controlling the data, interacting with the data, and basically and people who manage them as well. And a company can provide a job description, and AI algorithms will gather and crunch data from numerous sources to find people with the right skills, experiences, or perspective. My day job over here at Chapman, I'm the director of career advancement, and there are tools called ATS, applicant tracking system. When you submit a resume, literally, it will scan your resume to see how much of a fit that you can be with that job. There's ways you can kind of game that system. If anybody wants to learn a little bit about that, feel free to reach out to me. So there's some principles. So now we're going into this area of big data and AI, and there should be some certain principles of how we should act, how we should how responsible should we be. So for private customer data and entry, that should remain private. If you're a private customer, your information should, in theory, not in theory, but actually in actuality, should be private. And shared private information should be treated confidentially. That is your information, that is your data, and other people should not have access to it. It's almost like, is that any different than, when you go into the doctor's office and you have kind of like HIPAA, where you go in the doctor's office and there is an assumption there, and that assumption, there's a contract essentially that the information you give a doctor will be private and will not be shared. You should have the same kind of setup with your personal data. Customers should have a transparent view as to how their data are being used or sold. And you always see that sometimes you find out your data has been sold. There's that opt-in for cookies and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of you know, I don't know, sneaky way to do it. If you want to have access to, a site or something, I mean, basically you have to accept the terms. And always you'll hear in big data and tech companies that, well, the customers accept the terms of use. You scroll through a million pages, to get to the bottom, and you click that box. You don't know what you're agreeing to. You'd probably sign your life away. And big data should not interfere with human will, employing inferences and predictions, bellying who we are as people, essentially. So this should not kind of be take precedent as who we are as people. And big data should not institutionalize unfair biases such as racism or sexism. What are some of the undesirable side effects of technology? Technology, and as much as people want to criticize technology, technology has made our lives better. As much as you want to criticize like an Amazon or a Facebook or anything like that, any type of company that has basically, like an Amazon, for example, has lowered the prices for consumers. Does that end up, maybe hurting a retailer or reseller? Of course it can. You can and now you can get stuff delivered instantly to your house. Any big company out there that has essentially changed our life, made a big kind of pendulum shift in technology, has in some way made our lives better. That was kind of their intent, but then you kind of see what's happening with some of these companies, and it's they kind of take a good thing and they go a little too far. So here's some of the undesirable side effects of technology: environmental pollution and depletion of natural resources. It takes a lot of power, a lot of energy to operate these companies. And also you see these huge kind of data farms out there. That has to sit on land. That land could basically kind of be used for, in its natural kind of habitat. And there's a technologically unemployed, meaning people who do not keep up to date with technology can be left behind, be unemployed. And the last undesirable side effect of technology is the creation of unsatisfying jobs. It's like you see these Amazon fulfillment centers. Some of you probably worked in there. There's literally, Amazon is such a huge employer. They are wrestling with the fact that they might not have people. They might run out of people because people kind of just burn through people a little too fast. So will this create unsatisfying jobs? What is technological determinism? It's a really interesting definition that it's like what can be developed will be developed. I remember just having the thought of when TiVos came out. And I thought, and TiVos came out, and then then when like kind of did, and then you would have TiVo, and when Netflix started going digital, I thought we're not that far off from having just basically every option, every possible option at our fingertips with our cable companies, if you still have cable. And now that kind of stuff is happening. When MapQuest, which is the precursor to like Google Maps, when that came out, when you can get kind of like turn by turn instructions to go anywhere, I'm like, imagine if we could have that on our phones. Of course we can. If you can think it, it can be done. And this is sometimes done without the consideration of ethical issues. That's usually a problem or an issue. Ethical ag, what is that? That's the speed of technology. When it changes, the speed of technology change far exceeds that of ethical development. We're going way too fast, and people are just kind of just way too eager to make those changes. And are we forgetting about the ethical dilemmas as we go? Most likely, yes, we are. Ethical tech, what is that? Ethical tech, that's just being able to understand the potential dilemmas that designing and using these technologies can present. Kind of a little bit connected to this ethical lag. The speed of technological changes far exceeds ethical development, and then the dilemmas that are posed by this fast moving technology. So I think we are in a time where it's just create, solve. There might have to be more of a slowdown. I think that might have to come more from the governmental level about the right, the wrong. But the problem right now, I think, as far as with our with government, Congress, and Senate, you see these hearings when somebody will come in, like Mark Zuckerberg will come in, and literally these senators, they're so old, they have no idea what they're talking about. their staffers are basically telling them what questions to ask. I think once we get to the point, I think we're getting there, where younger generations who are growing up with technology, they will understand what ethical tech is, and they will understand more about ethical act and be able to solve problems as they're happening. Ooh, Easter egg. What's the Easter egg? Best Western, Park City, Utah. I'm a huge Rams fan. That's where I saw them win their first Super Bowl in the 1999 team, the greatest show on turf, with my brother. We went to the park, we went to the Sundance Film Festival, and we watched it in the Best Western, Park City, Utah, right next to the Kenny Rogers Roasters. There was a Denny's in the lobby that was operated as the room service. All right, the characteristics of an ethical tech mindset. So now that we've kind of presented the problem, what are kind of some characteristics to solve that problem moving forward? One, there should be a drive towards shared inclusion, cross-functional responsibility. Everybody should be responsible for this, and everybody should be kind of involved in finding the solving these problems. Two, being ethically driven from the start. Think about the ethical dilemmas from the beginning, not just profit driven and chasing a buck. Three, making ethical tech part of a holistic, tech savvy approach. Once again, it should be intertwined and considered from the beginning. Four, making the ethical tech mindset relevant, specific, and flexible. Flexible is the key there. Can't have a kind of rigid thinking about what is ethical tech. Five, making sure it's more than just compliance. You're not just doing things just so you don't get in trouble. You're doing things because you want to do the right thing for society. And then six, is that six? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, six. Equipping your people with resources to respond. And the last one is ensuring your approach can evolve. That you can evolve, you will evolve, and you're not just kind of stuck in your kind of rigid ways. Oops, sorry. Surveillance. It's a big one. I feel like we're all being watched, right? Well, we are. Macy's, CVS, and Babies R Us stores, they use a system called Video Instigator. So let's think about this. Investigator, sorry. If a shopper removes 10 items or more at once from a shelf or opens a case normally kept closed and locked, the system alerts security of that activity. So you are absolutely being watched. But like for that, it's they're basically like, if you're going to go and just do kind of a grab a bunch of stuff, that's just basically indicative of behaviors that people are trying to grab stuff and trying to steal things. I know somebody who works security like for some Target stores. They basically say that they are watching you. So if you steal something, they will know what you're stealing. They can figure out the value of it, and then they're not going to do anything. However, because of facial recognition, at a certain point, when the cumulative total of everything you're stealing goes above that legal limit, then they will stop you. So if you're thinking you're taking stuff from Target, getting away from it, you're really not, because they know what you're stealing individually. But then at a certain point, when it goes over whatever it is for a felony, that's when they're going to come. That's when they're going to come after you. So and then we are indeed being watched and recorded more and more and more. Here's a very kind of interesting topic. You know, when you're buying something online, it has that CAPTCHA, whatever it is, it'll show you like, here's a bunch of squares, and can you click all the squares where there's a car, or click all the squares where there's a bus, or there's a traffic light, or there's a motorcycle, or there's something like, or a crosswalk. Do you know what all of those things have in common? They're all things that you see when you're driving. This is a product created by Google that will eventually go into driverless cars. So they're getting millions upon millions of pieces of data and feedback from people about, this is what a car looks like, this is what a bicycle looks like, this is what a crosswalk looks like, this is what a bus looks like, this is what a bridge looks like. And all this is going to this massive database, so that for the information for driverless cars, because they want to, and the question they ask on there is to ensure that you're not a robot, right? You can tell how somebody uses their mouse and the consistency with how they use their mouse and their speed with how they use their mouse, or if they're using the mouse, whether or not they're a robot. You can also tell for if someone over time is not using their mouse as efficiently as they did in the past. You're slower to click on things. You're drag things a little bit differently. And why is that important? How is that important? Is that you sometimes if your accuracy with using a mouse slows down, that could be an indication that there's some kind of brain problems or problems with your mental faculties. Some kind of could be some kind of a head trauma. Could be indicative of stroke-like qualities. They could very easily take this same information and alert a doctor, alert insurance companies about this, but they haven't yet. So, but that's when it gets into kind of those ethical dilemmas. When you have this information, what do you do with it? Social media, come on, it's for the birds. It's going away, right? Wrong. Biggest issues companies need to consider with social media: collecting and using personal corporate information. What do we do with this information? Where is it being stored? There's a great Netflix show about, it's kind of like getting into the mind of everybody who's on social media. I forget it's called, a social something or other. Really good. Creating and maintaining company discussion boards, blogs, chat rooms, and marketing activities, so that you can kind of get real feedback from real people, not from these bots or from some people from, some Russian trying to, upset everybody and just kind of for political purposes. Reviewing company information to be posted on social media. That's very important. Fourth one, disclosing company sponsorship and ownership of posted materials. There's really just not enough people that they can ever employ to go through this stuff, and that's a horrible job. Sometimes the people who have to actually determine whether or not something is too much to put on social media, those are terrible jobs. They get burned out, and the stuff that they end up seeing and having to moderate is pretty intense. And then closing, company conflicts of interest with information posted on social media. The company, there's a profit motive, but they have to also be fair at the same time. The government's involvement in consumer privacy protection. The government is getting more and more involved, but like I said, I don't think it's going to be fixed or not as good as it could be until your generation is basically in positions of power. So keep going to school, graduate, work your way up. California passed something called the California Consumer Privacy Act 2018 that gives consumers more control of the personal information companies collect from them. So it's kind of fair and ethical. And the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, issued a report of the best practices to protect consumer privacy. There's three. Is it three or is it next? Yeah. Those three would be privacy by design, that companies should build in privacy at every stage of product development. This is kind of piggybacking on some earlier points. And this must be a very thoughtful, thorough thing that companies are doing. Two, simplified choice for consumers and businesses. Consumers should be given the ability to make decisions about their data, not just, and actually know those decisions are not just have to scroll to the bottom, through page and click accept to get onto a website. Three, greater transparency. Make information collection and use practices transparent. It's always this big mystery of what they're doing with this information. And then business initiatives to protect consumer privacy. There should be ethical leadership. It should start from the top. And there should be privacy policies as well. Walt Disney Company, I know the guys in charge of security, like security, data security at Disney, and it is a huge topic and very important for Disney and their customers. There should be a chief privacy officer also. Create those chief privacy officers. Creation of this position is to ensure privacy for the company, ensure privacy and most importantly for the consumers. Data security, essentially protecting corporate data from unauthorized access, corruption, loss, or attacks. Questionable business practices. Because sometimes you're clicking around, you might not be intending to get on some, pornographic website, but you click the wrong thing, there you are. Or you could be, go down the rabbit hole, end up being in some gambling site. You know what I did? I did one time. I was trying to watch some UFC fight, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, go on this one site, and you can get it free. It's pirated." I did it. It was the worst thing I ever did. My computer. I got so much junk popping up on my computer, and I didn't even get to see the fight. And and the downloading of intellectual property. That's always a big one, of the downloading of of music from artists, and that's their intellectual property. And then also monitoring technology, monitoring the activity of consumers while they are using your product. I got two more slides there. Automation and robotics. This is a big one. There's the public's expectations about future automation include the following. Widespread automation will advance in the coming decades. It's absolutely happening. If those of you who don't want to deal with it, and just it's tough, it's happening. There will be more negative than positive effects from widespread job automation. We don't know that yet, but it could actually improve our lives. That's why it's very important to get your education, to really separate yourself, figure out what differentiates you from everybody else. And also, if that's where it's going, maybe get into those fields, get into robotics, get into artificial intelligence, get into machine learning. And if some of you think it's too hard to learn, everybody had to come from somewhere. Get involved with companies like platforms like Udemy. Udemy has every type of training that you could possibly get. Learn how to separate yourself from those people who are not putting in the effort. Automation has hurt more people than it has helped. As I said, once again, remains to be seen. It could always be, hey, the sky is falling, but where there's change, there's opportunities. Automation will disrupt a number of professions. It absolutely will, to change a lot of professions. And young and part-time workers will be personally affected. Yep, possibly. It's like, there used to be more, it's like you see with self-checkout stands. Is that taking away jobs of tellers? It might, but there's going to be other jobs, other opportunities down the road. Should there be limits of job automation? That's a big concern for people. And there is a split on whether it is government's duty to help machine displaced workers. It's a big one. And then biotechnology is another big concern, like cloning animals for food. Because we have this food that derives from animals. Should we just start cloning the animals? Is that weird? Is that creepy? I don't know. And GMOs, the genetically modified organisms, are food made through gene splicing. It's kind of playing God slightly with food and resources. So with that, I think that is it. Yep, that's it for chapter 8. Everything should be up on Canvas. If you need anything, reach out to me. Talk to you soon. Bye.